Hi and welcome to this week's GMBN Tech Show. Coming up, we talk a little bit about that 14-speed Sram transmission. I'm sure some of you are dying to find out about that. There's some new cross-country bikes from Giant, the Anthem Pro Advanced 29, serious weapon, and MMR as well with their Kenta. There's also some really cool stuff from you lot, and we talk a little bit about a custom helmet. You can order a bespoke helmet to fit your head. Cool stuff. Okay, so straight up, let's talk about this 14-speed Sram transmission that does not exist, okay? There is no 14-speed transmission, and as far as I'm aware, there is no 14-speed transmission coming from Sram. I just made slip of the tongue in a recent video, and a few of you picked up on the comments. I'm sure everyone realises I ballsed up, didn't I? I just slipped my words a bit wrong coming out. I mean, there's a lot of information to try and talk about in that video, and I just didn't even notice. But maybe subliminally, I was thinking 14-speed for a reason. Because, well, Roll-Off obviously make their internally geared hub with 14 speeds, like the world famous hub. Amazing quality piece of kit that, actually, to be fair. And also, way back in 1999, Shimano actually put a patent through for a 14-speed cassette and a mechanism to use that on a bike. And in fact, you should be able to see it on screen. I actually wrote an article about it and put it out as an April Fool on a website I used to work for. And actually it went down so well that the UK distributor, Madison, at the time, actually called me up and like, what are you playing at? We've started getting some orders and some order interest in this. You know, you're going to have to tell everyone it's an April Fool. So I did, but it's pretty funny. And then a couple of years later, Bike Radar also reported on that patent from 1999. I think it's what I just said. But so this is it on screen. But it's pretty wild, isn't it, that Shimano have been working on these sorts of things for many years. So it does make you wonder, are they going to go that far, or have they just protected a design that they may never produce? Who knows, really? So, you know, really, do you actually need more than 12? I thought it was not possible until, I think probably 3 years ago, I'm going to say at Ciotta, confused with all the travel, or lack of travel, Rotor, the company that make those amazing cranks, they actually make a 13-speed cassette rear shifter and shifter and derailleur, but it's a hydraulic mechanism on there. It's an absolutely incredible piece of kit. The shifting felt really good on the one I just had to go out on a stand, just like a prototype. But a cassette was just a work of art. I mean, hopefully you can see some shots of it on screen now. It's just mind-blowing, but really, 13 speed? Do you need that? And what other standards would have to happen to bring in 14 speed? I mean, we've gone from 135 back ends to 142 up to 148 to basically the boost spacing to compensate to give us good chain lines. And then there's 157 super boost. Are we going to have like a super duper boost, like a 160mm rear end to have that? Surely we just don't need to keep adding in more and more standards. Come on, 12 speed surely is good enough. Who's with me? Is 12 speed enough? Do we need more than that? Do we need more standards? Let us know in the comments underneath. Okay, into news then, and first up is a new bike from Giant, and I'll tell you what, this is a corker of a bike. So it's the Anthem Pro Advanced 29, or the Anthem Advanced Pro 29 even. This is it on screen. There's a few different specs available. I've been looking at the one with the Fox Live Valve system on there, and man, this bike, those guys know how to build a bike, I tell you. So it's a slightly more modernised approach to the regular Anthem, which has 90mm travel on the rear. This has got 100, and it's geared for a fork up to 110 on the front. So I wouldn't necessarily call this like a down-country themed bike. It's a cross-country race bike, but it's just a very modern approach to it. There should be a load of shots whistling past you now. So the back end on these is 250 grams lighter than the previous model, which is a whopping amount to remove off the back end of that bike. So suspension action, in theory, should be really good. And to be fair, Giant have always been excellent at doing that with their cross-country bike, so I can only think that this is just going to be better again. I mean, it's got the FlexPoint Pro suspension system, as you can see there, and it's got 29-inch wheels up front. It's got 67.5-degree head angle, so that is pretty progressive as far as the lightweight cross-country bike goes. A 75.5-degree seat angle on there, so plenty steep enough to keep your weight central on the bike. 435mm chain stays. And there's 4 sizes, small through to extra large. And the reach on those, this is cool, so from 420 to 495. So not too long, but definitely longer than most sort of cross-country style XL bikes out there. And of course, the 420, even at the small end, is going to be that little bit more roomy, enabling you to run a slightly shorter stem for a more responsive ride. I think this thing looks really good. I mean, I've always been harping on about short travel bikes and how much fun they are to ride, but this thing man, this is a seriously nice bike. So the only pricing I've got currently is in US dollars. We've got the Pro 3 at 4,600 and the Pro 1 at 7,500. I mean, this thing is an absolute weapon. Make no mistakes. What do you think of that then? And next up, another cross-country bike. This one looking a little bit more on the whippier side. So quite traditional in terms of travel and geometry, but man, this thing looks super nice. The MMR Kenta coming at you on screen right now. So this was actually a prototype. I think we saw it first at the Olympics being raced. So it's got 100mm travel on the rear. Again, like I said, quite whippy geometry. So 435mm chainstays, 69-degree head angle on there. So actually, quite different to the Giant, but it's a different style bike. This is a super lightweight, super efficient, and kind of the rear suspension lets you know that as well. So as you know, a lot of the lightest bikes have a very similar suspension design for the same reason that you can make them extremely light. So it's a single pivot and has a swing link driving that shock just under the top tube, and it has a flex stay. So instead of having a pivot either on the chain stay or on the seat stay, it uses the carbon, essentially the natural flex in the way that they engineer it to act as a pivot there to give you the extra sort of curve that it needs to actuate the suspension. That of course does without having a pivot and without the bearings that go in there and the hardware. So you're losing all of that weight off the back end there. So an extremely lightweight bike. Like I said, 69-degree head angle on there. There's 3 sizes, small, medium and large. Again, a bit more of a traditional approach there, not having an extra large. So the reach on there, you're talking 415 up to 465 with the 3 sizes there. So if they were making an extra large, I'd say it's probably around a 480, something like that, looking at the jumps between them. So a little bit shorter, but then it's a 100mm travel bike. It's a super lightweight, and you've got to have different style bikes for different riders, but that looks seriously nice to me. Next up, a mudguard. Yeah, it's just a mudguard from Fox, but it fits directly onto their forks, and I like this sort of stuff because it's really neat and tidy. Now, there are loads of different brands out there that make mudguards and sort of the big style moto fenders. One of the ones that I like to use is RRP, so Rapid Racer Products, because of the fact they do one that mounts directly to the archway on 34, 36 and 38 forks. Now, this one from Fox mounts in a similar way, but with 2 additional mounting points, just for the 36 and the 38 that have those atmospheric balance bleed ports on the back of the legs. So it uses those to keep it in place. So you know this thing's going to be rock solid. And it just looks really clean because it's formed for the Fox forks. Really nice, not a lot else to say about it. 25 quid. It's a mudguard. It's from Fox and it looks pretty good on your forks. There you go. But lastly, I want to talk about Hexr helmets. So this is actually quite exciting. Now, I know that they're not a mountain bike related product currently, but it's the technology and where they might be going with this. So it's a UK-based company and they essentially offer you a completely bespoke helmet to fit your head. And I actually saw this on Instagram on the European Bike Project. If you don't already follow that Instagram account, I suggest you do, because there is some seriously good content on there and they really make an effort to sort of help educate people on what they want to post about. Really great account. The link is down there. Give them a follow. Promise you, you will love what they post. But anyway, I saw the helmet on there and I thought, man, like that reminds me a little bit of the Smith helmets, because you know the straw technology there with the holes for the ventilation, but giving you loads of, I don't know, it's like a cellular honeycomb style construction, so it makes perfect sense in a strength way, letting the air through, but obviously giving you good crushability there to absorb impacts. But yeah, so I clicked through to the website. I'm just looking at it now, and it's really quite cool. So they say every Hexr helmet is a one-off, made to precise dimensions and curvature of your head. The app, so you basically log in through an app, and it builds a 250,000 point model of your head in seconds, and then they build it off the back of that. And there's some shots popping up on screen of the thing. So, all right, so this design might not suit a lot of mountain bikers, but the tech is what I like in this. I think it's really cool. And of course, if you look at the construction, I mean, they basically say that the materials used in some other helmets is fit for packaging and not necessarily using on your head, which I don't necessarily agree with. I think every helmet manufacturer picks the right thing for what they're trying to do, but there's no doubt that what they're doing is perfect for what they're trying to achieve. So the helmets, they say they use a plant-based material called polyamide 11. Doesn't sound very plant-based, does it? But it's made from 100% castor bean oil, which is pretty interesting. I just think it's really cool. So they're making effectively a sustainable helmet. I'm just going to click to their website. Give me 2 seconds here. They're making a sustainable helmet that's completely custom bespoke. 300 quid it will cost you, just under, to get one to custom fit your head. And in theory, it should be the most comfortable helmet you can possibly buy because of the fit. What do you think of this? I mean, I think it's a really interesting looking helmet. They actually say, that quote was, foam is designed for flat packaging, not protecting the human head. That might rile a few companies out there, but the amount of technical information on here, I think it's really cool. I think it's a really interesting concept. I'm going to be following these guys to see what and where they go next. Are there any other companies out there doing alternative things like this that you'd like us to look at, or that we should know about that we've not talked about? Because I was caught unaware when I saw this. I had no idea who this company was, and I think it's really, really cool. So Hexr.com, check it out. There's a link right under there. Definitely have a read on the site. Interesting stuff. Okay, so comments then. There were loads of great comments, as always, to be fair, from last week's show. So Velocity FPV says, Millyard Racing downhill mountain bike MR001. Best homemade mountain bike ever built, and it's got an internal gearbox. Whole video of it on YouTube. Yeah, for a while I've been intending to go and see this, guys. It just hasn't worked out with timing. Thankfully, after Christmas, January, February, March time, it's much easier for us to get on with making content. The run up to Christmas is particularly crazy at this end. So Stephen and Alan, if you're watching, I will love to come and see you guys and see what you're up to. Maybe even have a go on that Hyper Ride 2 Shock of yours as well. The Millyard bikes are just phenomenal. Like, they were leagues ahead of the game when they brought those things out. Amazing stuff. Next up's from Rory Smith. With blocked valves, just remove the valve internal and poke an Allen key through. Sorted. I kind of know this thing. They're just offering a solution for other people, and I think it's great to have that solution if it's a problem for you. It's better to have the choice, right, than not. I think it's a good thing. But you do have a real cool tip in here that I'm going to reuse this in a tip video. You say, make sure the valves are at the highest point of the wheel when you lay your bike to rest after a day's ride. That's a great tip. Makes common sense, doesn't it? So the fluid's going to sit at the bottom, the valve's going to be at the top. If your valve sat in the fluid, there's more chance of the sealant, or the fluid basically congealing in there and bunging it up. So good tip there. Nice one. Thank you, Rory Smith. Next from the WizKid. I'm asking myself if clogged valves are actually a thing. I've never encountered this problem. PC's valves, Max's tyres, Stan's milk. All right, try the Stan's race milk and then come back to me on that one. Next one's from Mad Mark. There's a few people that commented on me talking about inverted forks technically being the right way up sort of thing. Yeah, and it seems that in the motorcycle world, they call them USD or inverted forks, just as we do in the mountain bike world, and they've not always been that way. But hey, I think the point of what I was trying to talk about is why inverted style forks can be really good on mountain bikes, but they're obviously flawed in certain ways. And actually, more than a few of you commented on the intend forks needing to have lower protectors. So if you have a rock fly up and hit your stanchion tube at the bottom there, could be game over when you're racing, and that's an expensive mistake to happen as well. And let's face it, how many rocks and that do you see hitting your forks? I've got loads of scuffs on mine from stuff. So yeah, really good points there. I still really want to try the fork though. More people commenting about the Millyard and saying, I assume you've been riding Starling's new gearbox bike. Well, you probably saw the video at the weekend where I talked about a 14-speed Sram in there as well. The best comment this week though, this is a great one. So this one from Fernando Cole says, the first drivetrain, so in news we were talking about the alternative drivetrains. He says the first drivetrain was inspired by William Neely. You can see Neely's concept 1991 on his book Mountain Bike, page 135. I've got that book here actually, by chance. So let's have a look at this. This will make you laugh. I know exactly what you're talking about here. This is quite good. And this book is genius. There we go. Right there for you on screen. Good stuff. And if you haven't got this book, you can get it cheap on Amazon. It's worth a read. And a little side story about this book, or the writer of this book, William Neely. I got to see his Klein, his custom Klein bike that was made especially for him. It's now belonging to a collector in the UK I think he's probably got the largest collection of Klein bikes. We made a video all about them. I've never seen a collection of like retro vintage bikes in that condition. They were just fantastic, with the best paint jobs I've ever seen. So please have a look at that video. There's going to be a link underneath and you'll see the William Neely bike in there with these graphics on here. I mean, honestly, this book is hilarious and it's so old now that all the stuff in here is kind of almost new. It's really relevant right now. So I urge you to try and get a copy of that if you can on Amazon or whatever bookshop you might be able to find a copy in. It's good stuff. Okay, top mods time. Tell us all about your modifications you've done to your bike to make it a bit more personal or just to make it better than it was. Could be anything, could be just fitting a new handlebar, could be a new paint job, could be stripping a bike down, whatever it is, share it with us. It's really cool. There's a link right there. There's another one down there. Now this one is from Stuart in Port Elizabeth, South Africa. I recognise your name. I feel like you entered Rewind last week with that really cool elevated chainstay bike. If not, it was someone else in Port Elizabeth in South Africa, just by chance. Either way, very cool stuff. You say, I've always loved polished aluminium bikes, and I've done a few in the past. After owning my Trek Roscoe for a few years, I got bored of the matte black colour and decided it was time. I used a chemical paint stripper, followed by sanding with various grades of waterpaper and finally polishing with a product called Autosol. So yeah, actually you've done a similar process to what Henry tried to do, but I think he didn't expect how difficult and how time consuming it was, because it's a lot of elbow grease to do this. The finish on your one looks unreal. I had custom decals made at a local signage company, including new chrome decals for the fork. Ah, nice. So they don't just match by chance. That is like seriously polished as well. Yeah, I've got Autosol as well. It's great stuff, that. Yeah, oh man, I'm well impressed. Look at the gloss and the finish on there. Got the sun beaming off the top there. Have you done the the top cap to match and engraved that yourself, or does someone make that for you? The beast. It's good. Yeah, the fork decals are great. RockShox 35. You've literally given your bike a brand new lease of life. It looks like a new bike, doesn't it? I think that's really cool. This is one of the cool things about upgrading your bike. You can just make all these little changes or a big change like this without, having to buy a new bike or anything like that. And I think that's great. If you can keep your existing bike going and sort of rejuvenate it, that's what you want to keep doing. It's also why I say it's really important to get, ideally, try and get a good frame fork shock combo, because the rest of the stuff you can keep on building and you can keep making the bike great. And if you're daring enough, like Stuart, you could do something like this, strip all the paint off and give it a brand new look. But fair play, that is like a serious amount of work. And actually the shot here of the bike laid down on like the black bin bag there on the lawn, I think that looks roughly what the one that Henry looked like at the finish, not quite there, because I think he just ran out of time with filming to get it quite as shiny as your one. And it's mad to think that's the same bike, isn't it? It even makes the frame look different. It makes the frame look longer, I think, in the raw finish. Yeah, it looks like a roomier bike. I mean, certainly wasn't a bad looking bike before, to be fair, but wow, what an effort. I think that is super cool. Anyone else done anything as crazy as that? What have you done? Show us and we'll put you on top mods. I love seeing this stuff. And we've got time to go old school with some rewind action. So any of you out there that have any old school stuff, could be old magazines, could be pictures of you or other members of your family or mates riding old school bikes or anything like that, send them in. We love this stuff because it's important to acknowledge, as bad as some of that stuff was, where it came from, because it gives us the amazing bikes and tech we have today. And honestly, everything we have today, and any time a new product comes out, more than likely it has been done in some capacity before. Perhaps not very well. For example, RockShox recently brought out their flight attendant system, and it's an incredible piece of tech. At some point I'd love to try it myself to see how it works. But K2 made something way back that worked in a similar way. Of course, it wasn't very good by today's standards, but it was incredible at the time. You're talking back in the 90s here, so I think everything's kind of been done before, but the technology didn't exist to make it that well. And you've got companies like Sram and Shimano and stuff just really pushing the envelope with it now. But hey ho, onwards. So this one is from Grant in Rockland, USA. It's a 1995 GT LTS 3000 DS with a boomerang-shaped seat tube on there. I love the LTS bike. So link tuned suspension. Of course, they have the LTS back in their range now. True 4-bar suspension design, just like this one. You can tell that by the little pivot on the chainstay down there. But yeah, I mean, it's a wild looking bike, but one of the coolest things about this bike, which I hope that you're going to show me, is on that linkage you could change the position of the shock, which altered the geometry, and also the shock was what's called a trunnion mount. So you're mounting directly to the shock, but you could screw the shock up and down, changing the bottom bracket height, head angle and seat angle with the bike. Really advanced stuff. Yeah, there you go. So this shock, it's a RockShox Deluxe coil shock, and you can see there on the side there, you can see the threads at the top there. That entire mount you could screw in, screw both ways basically to adjust the height of the bike. STX RC on there, classic GT Old Terror logos, used to love that slogan. Shimano LX brake levers, the servo wave ones. So this was really smart. So this is a great example of how cool and revolutionary Shimano were. They would always give people at a lower price point the same ride qualities with their stuff. So for example, in today's bikes, you'll get the SLX brace and SLX rear derailleur. They have all the same features as the more expensive ones you get in the XTR range. They'll just be heavier and they won't look quite as pretty, but they will work really flipping well. So these levers, you see they say servo wave action on them. This was a really cheap way to make these levers, but to give you, the consumer, the same power and the same brake lever feel that you could get from the much more expensive and much better XT and XTR levers, which look nothing like that. These ones almost looked a bit Heath Robinson by comparison, but it was all about offering you the power. And I love the fact that they really try and do that. They don't just palm people off with cheap products. I think it's a great company, a great ethos. Of course, they've made a few duff products over the years, which are pretty funny, but hey-ho. RockShox Indy forks on those, so they were quite cool. I think they came along, was it Indy after the Quadra? I think it was after the Quadra, and it was a slightly longer travel fork. I think that one does say long travel on there. I don't know what long travel would have been in the sense of that bike. I can't imagine it had more than 100mm travel, but hey-ho. And I've just said hey-ho 3 times on this show, and I have no idea where that came from. I'm sure someone's going to shoot me down over it. Onto bar ends on there as well. Massive stem. Looks a bit more like a tiller on a boat, but that's how it was back in the day. And there's another cool bike here. So this one's from Anthony in, we didn't say where he is, but Kona Syndicone, also from 1995. Now, the early Kona bikes were some of the most beautiful looking frames, I think. That classic sloping top tube. So they had all their own brand components. So the Project 2 forks on there. They also used to have the Track 2 fork, but I think they were recalled. They had like a crown on. You could adjust the height of the legs if you wanted to. But I think there's a problem with the crowns. But the Project 2 was a super popular fork. Impact headset on there. So one of the things that used to happen with traditional headsets, in case you're wondering what I mean, is the steerer tube used to have a thread on the top and the headset would screw onto there, and that's how you adjusted the bearing. Not like today where you pull the steerer tube through the stem and it's adjusted with a cap on the top and a clamp on stem. You used to have a quill stem that went inside, which is much heavier. One of the downsides of that system, other than the excess weight, was the bearing basically would adjust with a nut. You'd have a lock nut on the top there, but the lock nuts always used to come undone out on the trail, and because you needed whacking great spanners to adjust them, it was a bit of a nightmare. So what Kona did was they kept the adjustment with the spanner, but the lock nut was an Allen key, basically, so you could adjust it by hand if you needed to take up the slack in there and then tighten it by Allen key. Really smart system, that. Designed by Joe Murray, who's one of the Shimano skunk riders, I think, these days, doing prototype testing for them. But really, really cool, progressive stuff on their bikes, the geometry, all the features on them. And this is a beautiful example of a bike. I think actually Neil's got I'm going to say he's got a lava dome, I think from similar era, maybe in 93. He uses it as his sort of like daily commute bike. It's got like mud guards and stuff on it now. But I really like the fact he's still riding a bike that's that old. I think it's ace. So you've got a Ritchie Logic cantilever brakes on there. They're basically Diacomp 985s or 986s, I forget. But Ritchie Logic written on them, so made you want to buy them basically. You've got some new tyres on there though. Halo H blocks, but I guess that's because you can't, it's not very easy to get old tyres anymore. And they're more Kona stuff, race light handlebars. So they were super light handlebars and they didn't have a bulge in them. You used to put shim on them instead to make them fit on the stem. But really cool stuff. Sorry, I couldn't stop talking about that Kona stuff then. But yeah, keep the stuff coming. We love it. Sorry, that is all we got time for this week. No quiz, but it will return on next week's show. Thanks for tuning in. Give us a love in the comments and we'll see you soon. Take care.